of equations. Once again, either you can do this in your head or actually write it down. I got x, y, and I got z values. So my first equation, I have 1x, so I'll just put x plus 3y. Like I said, you could put 0z on there. I'm going to go ahead and skip that and just go to 5, because I have 0 of them, so why write them? I have 0 x's, so I'm going to skip that. I have 1y minus 4z's equals 8. And finally, I have negative 2 x's. I got 0 y's, but I have 5 z's, and that equals 7. And we are done. All right, any questions on either one of those two? Callie, you're all caught up, pretty much.
All right.
The only thing you didn't see is we actually solved one yesterday. One of these that was a 2 by 3. This one is solving, it'll be actually a 3 by 4 matrix, augmented matrix. But in short, we have 3 variables. I have 3 equations. We have to do this once now. You have to do it once on your homework. And then we're going to default to using your calculator. So we're going to learn how to use your calculator to do it for us. So we don't have to do any of these steps. Okay, are you ready for this?
Yes.
It's got a lot of space, right? Follow along with me. You feel free to get ahead of me if you want to. But make sure you're paying attention and you understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Otherwise, ask questions, because this can look confusing because, go ahead. I'm not putting a lot of work on there. A lot of it's happening in my head. I'll point out what I'm doing, but it won't be expressly written. All right, so you have to pay attention. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write that as an augmented matrix. So I'm going to rewrite this as an augmented matrix. And my augmented matrix is going to be 2, negative 1, 1, 1. Like, this is a personal thing. I always kind of do this. For whatever reason, I do my first row, then I come back down, and then I fill everything else in. No rhyme or reason for it. And then I just do 1, 1, negative 2, and 3, negative 1, negative 1. Also, if you see me make a mistake or you think I made a mistake, please point it out. Don't wait till I'm on like the 5th matrix to tell me that something was wrong in the first move I did, okay? All right, so who remembers what's the very first thing I need to do? The very first step in every one of these. John. And I want to make 2 of 1. He said, so basically we work from left to right for people that weren't here. We work left column to right column. And John said we're going to start out with this 2. This 2 needs to be a 1, right? So yesterday I'd multiply this whole row by 1/2. That works. That works. I'm just going to show you a different way to do it on this one. So I want to make 2 a 1. Sorry. You were getting ready to do the half, right? Which would work. It would work. Unfortunately, I'd have fractions all the way across the board. So I'm going to skip that. What I'm going to do instead is say, hey, I already have a 1 here. I am allowed, that was one of our row operations, I can switch rows. So I'm just going to switch these 2 rows. Normally I wouldn't put these arrows, but I'm just going to put it there for the notes. I'm just going to switch those 2 rows, which is going to put a 1 right where I want it. Yeah?
Can't we just switch, switch those 2 and then put the top row on the bottom so then we don't have a negative 1 there? Can we do that?
Oh, so it's already,
Yeah.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. I'm not going to do that now.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to make sure each class saw it the same kind of way.
Okay.
But what Peyton said is, hey, why don't we just go ahead and switch this, once we switch this down so I'd have a positive 1 there, because we know we're going to have 1s all the way across, so it would already be positive. It's good forward thinking. I'm just not going to do that. But the only time you should switch rows is in these first couple steps, because once I start having 0s and 1s, it doesn't pay to switch rows because it messes you up. So I'm just going to switch those 2 rows. And so my top is now going to be 1, 1, negative 2, 5. And my second row is going to be 2, negative 1, 1, 1, 3, negative 1, negative 1, 8. And I didn't leave myself a ton of room, but we should note that, hey, row 1 and row 2 switched places. Kind of have a little bit. Okay, then I'm going to continue on down here. What's the next number I should be looking at? I got 1 in the top left. My column is not complete yet. Remember, it has to be 1, 0, 0. So what should my next step be? John?
Well, since you already have the 1 in the correct spot, you want to continue going down like that specific column and like make the rest of the numbers 0.
Yep, I want to keep going down, and I want to make that 2 and that 3 equal to 0. So I'm focusing on those two, and I'm going to do both of them in one step because it's almost the exact same thing for both of them. So what I'm going to note is I'm just changing those two values, so my first row stays the same. It's still going to be that 1, 1, negative 2, 5. But my other two rows are going to change. How do I turn that 2 into a 0? Remember, the only things we can do is I can flip, right? I can interchange two rows. I can multiply rows by a number, or I can multiply a row by a number and add it to that second row. So what could we do, Matt?
You can multiply the first row by -2 and then add it to the second row.
Yeah, because if I just look at these three numbers, if I multiply this by -2, I'd have -2, and if I add it to this one, -2 plus a +2 equals a 0. All right? So to replace this whole row, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, multiply that first row by -2, add it to my second row, and make that equal, or not equal, that's a different notation. Then we're going to replace row 2 with that new thing. So remember, what we're doing is we're multiplying the first row by -2, so this will be a -2, -2, +4, -10, and we're going to add those values right below. What's sometimes nice to do, and you definitely don't need to do this, is I sometimes do a little side work. -2 isn't too hard to keep track, but sometimes I'll take my -2 and just right below this one say, hey, -2 times row 1 actually equals -2, -2, 4, and -10. All right, sometimes I have those so I can just go straight up. So now I can go, well, -2 plus 2 gives me 0 in that second column. -2 minus 1 gives me a -3. 4 plus 1 gives me 5. And finally, a -10 plus 1 gives me a -9. So that's a little side work if you want to do that. On my next one, I'm going to kind of do it in my head. And I'm going to do it on this step. What I'm going to multiply by, what am I going to multiply the first row by so that the third row cancels out and turns to a 0? Yeah. -3. Yep. So we'll have -3 times row 1 plus row 3 is going to replace my row 3. So this time I'm going to kind of do it in my head. All right, -3 times 1 is -3. -3 plus 3 is 0, so that did work out. So we're good there. Then we go back and say -3 times that 1. So we have -3 times 1 is -3, minus 1 is -4. Then we'd have -3 times that -2, +6, minus that 1 is going to be 5. All right, and finally I'd have that -3 times that 5, which is -15, plus that 8 is going to be -7. Did I make any mistakes yet? Are we sure? Okay. Column done. Now we go to our next column, and we start it all over again. We say which one needs to be 1. And what needs to be 1? The 1, the -3, or the negative... Please let it be the 1. Please let it be the 1. It's going to be the -3. Can someone tell me why I wouldn't want to switch these rows? because I'd put a 1 there. Why do I not want to just switch these two rows? Charlie?
Because you have a 0 where you want to.
Yeah. I already have this whole column. As soon as I switch it, I mess up my column work, right? Okay, so we need to turn that -3 into a 1. Well, that isn't anything crazy. So sometimes I circle this because then it lets me know the only row I'm working on is this one, so the other two rows are going to be the exact same. So my top row is still 1, 1, -2, 5. And can someone tell me what I'm going to multiply that second row by to turn that -3 into 1? A positive 1. Hint, it's a -3 right now. Anisha? -1/3. That one should be an easy one, right? So of -1/3 times row 2, and I'm going to rewrite row 2 using that -1/3. So we're going to go across the board. -1/3 times 0 is still 0. -1/3 times a -3 equals a positive 1. Good work, Anisha. Then we have -5/3. Ugh, we got fractions. And then we're going to have a positive 3, because -1/3 times -9 is a positive 3. Didn't do anything to my bottom row or my row 3. -4, 5, and -7. All right, I'm just going to erase something really quick, because I'm going to move this over to the next slide so I don't go too far down for people that are in the back. That is not going to copy. There we go. So this is just going to disappear for a second, and it should reappear on this slide. Okay. Sans that little area up there. Okay. So now I have my 1 in the right place. That means I need to turn this -4 and this 1 into 0. Well, to turn that 1 into 0, I just need to multiply this 1 by -1, or take the opposite of it, right? So I'm just going to take negative row 2 and add it to row 1. Let's make sure that works. So we're going to go ahead and make our new augmented matrix. My first row is going to change, so let's not even write it down. My first row is going to be a negative version of row 2, add it to row 1, and replace row 1 with what we got. All right, a -0 is still 0, so 0 plus that 1 is still 1. -1 plus 1 is going to be 0. -5/3 minus 2. I'm going to do a little side work on that one. Yeah, did I mess something up?
5/3. Is there already -5/3?
Yeah, it's going to be a positive 5/3. Did I say -5/3? Oh, sorry. Thanks for putting that. So it should be a positive 5/3, right? And that'll be, we're adding 2, which is technically subtracting 2. Rewrite that is 5/3 minus 6/3. That's going to be a -1/3. So -1/3 is going to go there. Then we have 3 times a -1/3. That's a -1. Added to 5 is going to be 4. I'm not changing row number 2. I have nothing circled there that I'm changing. Row 3, what am I multiplying row 2 by and adding to row 3? That's going to get rid of that 4. It's going to turn it to a 0. Really? What number do I multiply this by to get rid of this 4?
4.
So I'm going to multiply the whole row by 4. And it's going to turn that to 0. Yeah, did I mess something up?
I'm just feeling confused. Isn't it just a -3 plus the 5?
Oh, yeah. I was on a different step. Yep. That's why you're there to help me. So it should be a -3 plus 5, right? Because we're doing the negative row, -3 plus 5 equals 2. So it should have been a 2. Thank you. That guy should be a 2. Hopefully someone else caught that. What's up? Is there something else? Oh, don't worry about it. All right. Now we're going to go down here, and Willie told us, hey, multiply row 2 by 4. 4 times row 2. Add it to row 3. And replace row 3 with whatever you got. 4 times 0 is 0. All right, row 2. 4 times 0, 0 plus 0. We have 0. 4 times that 1 is a positive 4. Plus negative 4 is going to turn to 0. Then we're going to have 4 times negative 5 over 3, and we are going to add that to 5. I'm going to go ahead and do that in the scratch work down here. So 4 times a negative 5 thirds is going to be a negative 20 over 3. And we're adding 5 to that, which is negative 20 over 3 plus 15 over 3, which is going to equal a negative 5 over 3. So that's also negative 5 over 3. And finally, we're going to have 4 times, so I have 4 times my row 2, so 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 7 is going to give me 5. Double check that I got all that right. Okay, we're good. All right, now we're going to focus on that last column. And really the hard part is turning this to 0, or turning this to 1. In fact, this last column, even though it's fractions, isn't that bad. So we're going to turn this bottom one into a 1. And in order to do that, I'm just going to multiply by its reciprocal. And I'm going to make it positive, so I'm going to do the negative version of its reciprocal. So the only row I'm changing is the bottom one, so I'm just going to rewrite the top ones. So I have 1, 0, negative 1, 3. I got my dose, I got my trace. Come back around, I got my negative 5 over 3. I got my 1. I got my 0. Okay. Our zeros can't change. We know those are going to stay. But what I am going to do is I'm going to multiply row 3 by a negative 3 over 5. So negative 3 over 5 times row 3 is going to become my new row 3. Negative 3 over 5 times a negative 5 over 3 equals a positive 1. Negative 3 over 5 times 5 is going to be a negative 15 over 5, which is going to be a negative 3. Guess what? Right now I know z equals negative 3. We're almost there. We're almost there, guys. I know it's rough. It's a little easier when you're doing it yourself. All right. I'm going to replace that in case you're still copying stuff down. We'll see how much gets messed up. Nothing. All right. I just need to get rid of that negative 5 over 3, turn it to a 0. And I also need to turn that negative 1 over 3 into a 0 as well. Well, the good thing is I have this 1. So I just need to multiply this 1 by 1/3 to get rid of that guy. I need to multiply this by 5 over 3 to get rid of that guy, and that's it. And then we're done. Okay, let's do our augmented matrix. All right, to get rid of that 1/3, I'm going to multiply 1/3 times row 3. I'm going to add it to row 1, and that's going to become my new row 1. All right, let's go through this. 1/3 times 0 is 0. 1/3 times 0 is 0, so my 1 and 0 remain up there. Our 1s and 0s should always remain. If they ever change, you did something wrong. All right, 1/3 times 1 is 1/3. 1/3 plus a negative 1/3 is our 0. We're good there. 1/3 times a negative 3 is a negative 1. negative 1 plus 2 is going to be a positive 1. And we're done with that row. Our next row, like I said, we need to get rid of that 5/3. So we're going to multiply 5/3 times row 3. We're going to add that to row 2. And that's going to become my new row 2. 5/3 times, like I said, the 0 and 1 always remain, but I'll just double check. 5/3 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0. 5/3 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 1 is still 1. So we still have our 0. We have our 1. Then we do 5/3 times 1, plus a negative 5/3 will turn to 0. Awesome. And finally we have 5/3 times a negative 3. I'm going to do scratch work on this one. Alright, 5/3 times a negative 3 is negative 15/3. And we are going to add 3 to that, which is negative 15/3 plus 9/3. Oh, I didn't have to go that far. Never mind. Scratch that. What's 15 divided by 3?
-5.
Let's just do that way. That's just a little easier. Oh, there we go. So negative 5 plus 3 equals a negative 2. So we have negative 2 here. Our bottom was already done. 0, 0, 1, negative 3. And that tells me x equals 1, y equals a negative 2, and z equals a negative 3. And we are done. Yep, that's correct. Oh, I thought you were looking at it like it was wrong. Whew, I didn't mess up too bad. Good thing Brian caught that in the beginning, though. that could have snowballed. These are terrible if you make a mistake early, right? You make one mistake early and it snowballs into everything. So really take your time. I didn't show as much as I usually do, and that's why I made little mistakes. I usually do a lot of scratch work off to the side. I just make sure I do everything correctly, and I double check it really quick. All right. Whew, you just have to do that one more time. If this was any other class, I'd make you do, like college level class or something. You do multiple of these by hand. All right, you keep doing these till you're really good at them. But we just don't have time to repeat it over and over. So you have one homework assignment where you have to do this by hand. Everything else is going to be a smaller matrix that you have to do it by hand. But let's learn how to use our calculator to do all that work in 1/20th of the time, maybe even faster. All right, I know that matrix took a while. It's a lot faster if you do it on your own and you know what you're doing. I want you to go ahead and replace the numbers that are in yours with 2, 1, 4, 4, 2, 8. I was originally going to do a different problem, but if you notice that 2x plus y equals 4 and 4x plus 2y equals 8 is actually our next problem. So we're going to actually solve this problem as the example. So if I turn this into an augmented matrix, I'm going to turn it into 2, 1, 4, and 4, 2, 8. So go ahead and follow those directions. I'll be going up here. If you get stuck, I'll be talking about it, but you could definitely move ahead of what I'm doing. If my calculator works, it didn't work in the other class. So your big thing you have to recognize is right above your x to the negative first is your matrix button. Anytime you want to do anything with matrices, you have to hit second matrix. And then you're going to go to the edit. And you're going to edit A. Now currently this one is a 2 by 3 matrix. The good thing is if you type in the wrong thing, it shows you what it is. So if you typed it in wrong, if you put a 3 by 2, you'd realize really quickly that you had it messed up. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put our augmented matrix in, which like I said is that 2, 1, 4. So I'm going to put 2. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit my 2, 1, 4, 1, enter, 4, enter, 4, enter, 2, enter, 8, enter. Is anyone stuck before this? Is everyone past this or at this? Okay. If you ever need to, you can just hit the arrows and you go wherever you want to change numbers. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and hit second, and I think it says quit, but I'm just going to hit second matrix again. And then we're going to go over to that math. Don't hit the math button. We're still second matrix. Slide over to the math. Don't hit the math button. You won't find it there. Everything with matrices is in the matrix. And you're just going to scroll down till you get to the reduced. You get to, it's RREF. And mine takes a while because I'm very delayed. That's called reduced row echelon form. That is the form we want to. So mine is B, so I'm going to hit enter. And I don't think mine was cleared. This is where you want to hit second quit. I forgot to hit second quit. Because we want to be on the main screen when we do this. And then we go to our matrix. Scroll all the way down to RREF. Hit enter, and that's how it should look. So we have RREF. Is yours not working, Willie? Oh, okay. And then you hit second matrix, and you're just going to pick what matrix you want to use. We only put A in, so we'll just hit that. You can either hit close parenthesis or not. And you should come out with 1.52000. So we're going to go back to our example that we're working on. No, I just took a picture of it. That was the wrong move. I got to open mine back up because it just kicked me out. Hopefully it doesn't mess everything up. Okay, so using our calculator, it did all that work for us, and we came out to 1/1/2 2 0 0 0. But note this 0 0 0 thing. What this says is 0 equals 0. 0 equals 0 is a true statement. This is true. So then it is dependent. It is dependent. All right? So it is consistent and it's dependent. All right? So that's a special case. The other ones were independent that we did. The ones that you have x equals 2, y equals 3, z equals 4. Those are independent. This one's dependent. So anytime you come up with something weird like this, it's either dependent or independent. It would be independent. We'll see it in the next. If this was 0 equals 4. So if I had a 4 here, that would be inconsistent. There'd be no solutions. And we'll see an example right below. All right, let's go ahead and type in this one. We're going to solve this system using our calculator, and I'll tell you what you should get out. You should get out 1, -1, 1, 2, and 0, 1, -4, -9. Go ahead, take a second, and plug that. That is not what you should get. That is absolutely not what you should get. That is not what you should get. What you should get is 1, 0, 1, -3, -4, -7, -9. Is that better? I solved all these by hand just to make sure they work out. And they take me like no time. But I happen to do one of the wrong stages. All right, so that's what you should get. And what you notice is this looks like an identity here. But then we have a problem with that -3, -4, -7, -9. So what we actually have is x minus 3z equals -7 and y minus 4z equals a negative 9. No, your calculator did not make a mistake. How many equations do I have? How many variables do I have? How many equations do I need to solve a 3-variable system? I need 3, and I only have 2. This is as far as we could go with the 2 that they gave me. So we're at the end of our rope right now, and we're just going to say this is dependent. So if you ever get this, it's still called dependent because it's dependent on our z values that we can't get right now. All right, it's dependent on those z values which we can't get right now. So it's still called dependent. And that's why it's in the dependent systems category. All right, so dependent systems. Either you come up with zeros on the bottom and you know it's dependent, or you don't have enough information and it just becomes dependent like that. In fact, you could have known it was dependent right now unless for some reason you plug in your calculator and this row comes out to all zeros. It's most likely going to be dependent either way. All right, let's talk about inconsistent really quick. Before I plug this in my calculator, I need to first set it up correctly. So you should have altered this to x minus y equals 3. And the bottom one you should have negative 2x plus 2y equals 5. And so your augmented matrix should have been 1, negative 1, 3, negative 2, 2, 5. You plug that in your calculator, and correct me if I'm wrong, because once again I did this by hand. I have 1, negative 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Does that match? Can someone read this bottom row to me in plain English? Don't tell me 0, 0, 1.
0 equals 1.
Is that true? No. So that bottom row reads 0 equals 1. That is false, and that is why it's inconsistent. I ran a room, so we're going to stop at incon. But it's inconsistent because 0 does not equal 1. All right, be aware of all this information on the homework, because the homework says solve this matrix, list whether it's dependent, inconsistent, or just list the answer. So be ready for some oddball ones like this one. All right, let's talk about your homework really quick. We still have 7 minutes, which is awesome. Hey, I know you know how to use your calculators. What I want you to do is practice for the test, just in case I say you can't use a calculator for this problem. I want you to solve these by hand and then use your calculator to check them. All right, if it turns out it's wrong, I don't need you to go back and find. You can kind of locate your mistake, but don't do it all over again. Unless you mess up every single one of them. If you mess up every single one of them, it tells me that you're making a key mistake, right? So get this one, comes out correct. Awesome, move on. Do this one by hand. Comes out wrong. Okay. Next one, you get it right. Okay, you know what you're doing. All right, you just made a little mistake in that one. So do them all by hand. I forgot how many. I didn't give you all that many. But you do have a 3-system one. So that's going to be the longest one. But if you look at it, it's a bunch of 1s and a 2. So it's not a bad 3-system equation. Okay? And we already have zeros in there. All right? So go ahead and get started. In fact, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's only 6 problems.